Well, howdy there, Internet people. It's Bo again. So, today we are going to talk about how relationships change over time in international affairs. And how most times when you're talking about diplomacy, relationships between countries, they shift behind the scenes first. That way, the various countries involved, they know the new position before that new position goes public. Over the last month or so, we have talked about how U.S. diplomacy has been going on behind the scenes and just creeping along, little changes, little changes, little changes. And how the relationship between the United States and Israel is shifting. During this period, I've gotten a lot of pushback. And people have basically said, okay, well, if it's changing, what is it going to change to? And I haven't really stated an answer because I didn't know. I could see the signs that it was changing, but I didn't know how far it would go. What if I was to tell you that the United States was going to soon adopt the position that under no circumstance would it accept the forced relocation of Palestinians from either Gaza or the West Bank, and that it would not accept the redrawing of borders concerning Gaza? So the idea that Israel is just going to keep the north end of Gaza, which is something that is very prominent right now, it's not going to happen. That the U.S. would view that as something that might actually change a vote at the UN. I think if I said that, most people would say that I've lost the plot. I'd like to read you a statement. Under no circumstances will the United States permit the forced relocation of Palestinians from Gaza or the West Bank, the besiegement of Gaza, or the redrawing of the borders of Gaza. Right now, the Vice President of the United States is at COP28. While she was there, she met with the Egyptian president. This statement is from her office. It's from the White House. The shift that is occurring in the relationship is becoming more public. Partially, in my opinion, it's because Netanyahu is less than receptive when it comes to U.S. advice or U.S. concerns. So rather than it all being done behind the scenes, how it was earlier, it's becoming more public in hopes of generating more international pressure. And this is generally how it works. It kind of escalates. Offhand statement, then a tweet. Now you're getting a statement from the vice president. Eventually it'll be from State Department or the president. That shift is occurring. The relationship is changing. Now, of course, there are going to be people who say, well, they need to do X, Y, or Z. A big one right now is to cut all aid. That's not going to happen. That isn't something that's going to occur, whether you believe it's the right thing or not. There's a whole bunch of foreign policy implications to that way down the road. But the relationship itself is definitely shifting, and a lot of it has to do with shifting demographics within the United States. It wasn't that long ago when absolutely unconditional support for Israel was just a given because it was an incredibly safe bet politically at home. It's not anymore. And since it's not, it's being reflected in the foreign policy. And this is what we were talking about when we were talking about how if people really wanted to affect the outcomes, when it comes to foreign policy, they have to focus on what their government does. This statement is straight from the vice president's office. And it did occur after the meeting with the Egyptian president. It is worth noting that that is also balanced with the idea that the United States supports, I believe they were called legitimate military objectives, Israel's legitimate military objectives within Gaza. And then that statement was kind of balanced with, but the civilian cost has been too high and it can't keep going like that. People, generally speaking, when you're talking about any issue, especially one like this, people like things that are black and white, all or nothing, you're pregnant or you're not, type of thing. That's not foreign policy. It's not diplomacy. It's not how it works. It is a subtle shift, but this has taken place over the last 45 days. This is probably where it's going to end. There might be a little bit more, but generally speaking, this is going to be probably the new position that the U.S. has. And then where it goes from here, well, that's an entirely open-ended question as far as how any future peace process moves forward. Anyway, it's just a thought. Y'all have a good day.